there's a connection between what Stephen King writes about, vampires, monsters, rabid dogs, whatever, and some of the things that are most disconcerting about life in America in the 21st century, in the 20th and 21st century. I'm Tony Magistrale. I'm professor of English at the University of Vermont. I teach classes and I write books. Well, I guess you could say that I specialize in the Gothic. And by the Gothic, I mean the literature and film, often of the supernatural, but also the occult, and sometimes having to do with the what's typically called speculative fiction within the genres of art and literature. Speculative fiction is all about warnings. If you read it as I do, as realistic fiction, speculative fiction is a warning. And you don't pay attention to the signs at your own peril. I think that what Stephen King is looking at our world and translating it into a very obvious Gothic world, but still shading our world into that one. The first one that comes to mind immediately is The Stand.
Stephen King's The Stand.
The story of The Stand is a plague comes out of a laboratory in California. And the book is an apocalyptic fiction. It's about watching the end of the world take place. So the bulk of the novel is primarily about the characters that remain after the pandemic wipes out the world. But it's also about hope, and it's also about struggle, but it's also, more than anything, about making mistakes. And I think it speaks to King's prescient vision of what perhaps was coming. I just think he saw it back in the 70s. He saw it early. There's also another one, there's The Mist. But The Mist is another one of those military mistakes that unleashes not so much a pandemic, but a portal to another dimension. And out of that dimension come all of these Lovecraftian beings who beset humanity. King has been wont to argue that we're going to survive this, and we will survive this. But what he's interested in, and what I'm interested in the most, is what do we learn from this? There are warnings, there are flags. And interesting that I use that word, because flag is the evil character in The Stand, kind of a supernatural demon figure. But there are warnings to all of us to pay attention to what's being done in our name, particularly by the government, and particularly by experimenters who get into labs and think that they're going to design a super flu that they're going to use for military means. It's a warning. You're heading into territory like the Micmac burial ground in Pet Cemetery. You're heading into territory where the barrier was not meant to be crossed, and yet we still persist in doing that. We still think that it's okay for our government to engage in these things.